Free Friday webinars. And today we're going to talk about exams and how to pass mainly standardized exams or standardized tests. And we will definitely share resources for the IBETS, TESOL, any kind of exam for language learners, but it's also helpful for exams in general. And of course, this is from American TESOL. And we have a course, esltech.com. So you can get a teaching with technology certification, and you can find out more if you go to esltech.com. Now, most of the things I'm going to talk about is practicing each day, and I think that was the most successful type of that's the way that my students succeeded the most, is because we took the test. What we did was focused on different parts of the test, and we would do this each week, but we would do it in a way that also supported learning and learning needs, and we did it in an engaging way. So I'm going to share with you those examples that really help my students pass their tests. Now, I worked with beginner language students. I've also worked with all kinds of students, from very young students to adults. And what I found is that most of them were very successful in passing the test when we did it in this way. Now, one of the first things that I think is really important with any standardized test is to familiarize students with the formats and procedures. So a lot of times students don't pass tests because they might not understand the instructions. So they may know the material, but they run out of time, or they get very stressed out, or they think they're being tricked. And so when it comes to exams, it's important that our students take a practice test, but also that we make sure that they understand the format and procedures and everything that's going to take place and expected of them the day they take the test. So when I talk about the different formats, and also what's going to happen the day of the test, so there's many different aspects to that. There's what they're required to have, for example, a pencil, a couple of pencils, sharpened, if that's the kind of test they're going to take. Or if they're going to take it on a computer, what they're allowed to have and what they're not allowed to have. If they're allowed to have extra sheets of paper. And really help them brainstorm, think, or just relieve some stress when they're at the test. The format of the test, how many sections, if they're timed, how they're going to be assessed, well, what's the environment they're going to take the test in, also what are the sections that, is there an oral, is there a speaking section, is there a listening, and how they're going to be graded on those different sections. Also, the instructions, that's very important. We talked about that. And then what kind of stakes and procedures. So if they don't pass the test, they'll understand like what, or they don't pass a section, what will be a consequence of that. So I think if we cover that with students ahead of time, then we can really help them to want to be motivated to pass their test, but also they'll at least not waste time trying to figure out the instructions or procedures or the format. And it's important that we get them to save some time, because a lot of time tests are, the timing isn't enough time. So it's really important that the students know that. Now, if they're going to take a test and it's for students in general, like the if your language learners, for example, are taking an SAT test, or they're taking an ACT test, or something for students that are of the native tongue, then it's important to know whether there are testing accommodations for them. And so a lot of teachers don't realize that your students, they're allowed certain things at a test because they're language learners. Or if you have students that actually have learning needs, such as dyslexia or ADHD, or so a lot of times your students can have accommodations. when we talk about accommodations, you have a certain amount of time to um, get your student to be accepted for this accommodation. So make sure you know the deadlines, or they know the deadlines, so that you can start the procedure ahead of time, or the process ahead of time. And also, what are the eligibility requirements? And of course, one of the best ways to for your students to be successful at the test is to take practice tests. Now, I don't mean you have to take several practice tests. We don't have to focus our teaching solely on teaching for the test. I find that if you do this, depending when the test is, if you do 2 practice tests, that's what I've usually done with my students. They were fine. And if they wanted to do more at home, they were more than welcome to. So I'm going to show you a few sites where you can actually find some practice tests. There's shmoop.com, and shmoop.com has different types of exams. They have AP and all kinds of different exams. They even have some exams for English language learners. So they have free templates and things like that. I think they have a freemium, but then of course they have some other things that you have to pay for. But there's definitely some free material there. ExamEnglish.com has free practice tests. Now, the thing about Exam English is that they have a lot of advertisements, but it is one of the sites that actually has different exams, especially when it comes to English language learners. So they have a lot of advertisements, but they are free exams that they'll give you links to. Now, if you want to find the link to the presentation or any of the bookmarks, then you can, I just shared in the chat box where you can find them. So if you go to my Pearl Trees and look under assessment, then you'll find these. EnglishClub.com has different information and guidelines, and also different practice tests. For if you go to /ESL exams, you'll find these. So pre-test early, and one of the reasons you want to pre-test is not only to get them familiar with the format, make sure they understand the instructions, but you want to know why they are not doing well in a certain section, and you can tell what sections they're going to be particularly struggling with. And then we can help them come up with strategies. So you want to see what are their lowest scoring areas, give them strategies, ongoing, even things they can do at home to be able to prepare for this. You want to pinpoint any confusion they have. So if they don't do well in a section, then you can check whether it's because they didn't understand the instructions, what they were supposed to do, or because really they do um, they 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 need to improve in that area. So such as maybe their oral exam, or maybe reading area. So, or writing, and you can help them with that. What is their base knowledge and how they can grow from there? Learning needs, and also areas where they have stress. So when we talk about stressors, the tests are very, very, very stressful, not only for students, but also teachers. So it's good for them to come up with action plans, or to figure out what they're going to do when they don't understand the question or instructions. And a lot of times with standardized tests, the question itself can be very confusing, and that can throw them off. So what to do when they don't know, when they're demotivated. So some of these tests last hours and hours. I remember when I used to take some of my standardized tests, it would be the entire day. And so the brain kind of gets really tired, and some students can't handle that. What should they do when they run out of time? Because if they run out of time in a certain section, you don't want them to get demotivated. So you want them to still focus for the next section. So how are they going to deal with that? How are they going to deal when they're losing focus, when they get bored or they get tired, or when they just don't know the answer? And so, what kind of action plan can we help them develop? Well, a lot of there are some teachers out there who have done amazing things when it comes to an action plan. One of the ideas that I saw, and I thought it was really great, was a testing playbook. Now, I learned about this at the blog oneextradegree.blogspot.com. And so she actually has, even for young learners, where they have my testing playbook. And you can see how really pretty it is, how engaging it is. So she does make it really interesting. Teaching in room 6.blogspot.com. They have a lot of information about test prep. One of the things I thought was really interesting is here they have test prep stations. So students move around, they complete what it is, the section, the practice they're supposed to do, and then they move to the next one. And so it's very motivating because, and she even talks about different ways she has tried the stations. And then how she figured out the best and fastest way for her students to practice at a station. So I definitely support when students are able to move around and it helps them think and things like that. So I think this is a great idea. You don't have to do a station all the time because I know definitely with test prep, we don't want to teach to the test or teach to the exam. We want to make sure that we just support learning in general. But I think if you do this maybe once a month or a couple of times, it would be fun for your students. So the different skills that they're going to be tested on, and usually in most tests you have a writing and reading, and so when it comes to practicing those, and I know a lot of students struggle with that, it's important that each day they practice these skills. And so what I found is having prompts on the board. And what I mean by that is every day I used to have my students complete a prompt. It could be a writing, an audio prompt, and they would always see that, and they got in the routine that the first 5 minutes of class they sat down with their journals and they wrote, or they did some kind of prompt. And that really helped with my classroom management. So it wasn't only helping them with practicing writing, but it also helped with them to start thinking about my class, to start settling down, and also to get their brains focused on the class. And these can be fun. There's actually a Pearl tree that talks about writing prompts and places you can do the writing. In fact, you can find that in some of my slide shares. So I'm going to go ahead and share those with you. These are all my presentations, and you'll even find this presentation there. But the one of the most recent ones is called Motivated to Write. So if you find that particular one, then you'll be able to find those writing prompts. You can also assess with the same scoring guide. So I found that to be very successful, especially when they're looking for the 6 traits. And if I could assess them with those 6 traits for writing or any way that their exam was going to be assessing them, then they got used to it. They understood the standards that way. They understood why they got a 3 versus a 6, or why they got this score versus another school. So, and then what they had to do to get a higher score. So we have to assess writing anyway. We have to assess the skills anyway. So we align our assessment or our scoring with the test ones, then they can get used to it, and they can know how to increase their scores. And of course, let's make the test prep interesting. So students they're already going to be stressed out. They're already going to be demotivated during test time. So it's good to motivate them as much as possible and to keep their spirits up. Because if they walk in with a positive mindset, if they walk in feeling like they're prepared and ready and confident, then they're going to make a higher score. So when I was talking about the blog, one extra degree, she also has an incredible Pinterest board full of strategies, and so I'm going to share that with you because I really just liked all the ways that she really motivated her students to practice for tests or to prepare for tests. She has different games. She had different handouts, and so a lot of these are really really great strategies. I think this teacher, her name is Amanda Nickerson, is also part of Teachers Pay, so you can get an idea of her different strategies. But if you click and you want the actual handout, I believe that she does charge for those, but she does have a lot of interesting strategies and you can get ideas for them. There's a lot of different apps and web tools that allow students to um, answer standardized questions or answer questions with multiple choice, but they also make it into a game. So the idea is for them to play some of those, getkahoot.com, and they can, if they have to learn facts, if they have to be drilled, then Get Kahoot is a good way to do it. And most teachers I talk to, actually every teacher I've talked to that uses Get Kahoot, says that their students love it. Like they're very motivated to play these games. So instead of just making a quiz or a pop quiz or quizzing them, Get Kahoot is a better way, I think, or better strategy. It's free and works on any device. But the great thing about Get Kahoot is it also gets your students to make their own quizzes, and then they can test their peers as well with the information they need to know. Personally, one of my favorite ways for students to create games is TinyTap. TinyTap works on iOS and it also works on Android, but it's a game creation app. And the students can upload their own pictures, they can add sound effects. It has things like labeling, so it really does help with a lot of different test prep. But it also makes it fun, it's enjoyable, and the students can create their own games. If you don't want them to create their own games, then they can also look at the different exams that are on TinyTap. If you go to the website, you can play many of these different quizzes, basically, but they seem like games, and you can see how interesting and great they are. Test prep is really great when students get to work together as a group, as a community, and they can really support each other, because each of them is going to have strengths and each of them is going to have weaknesses. And the more that your students help each other, then the more they're going to remember and know how to take those areas of the test or the different sections. So it actually helps them become smarter. They can find a community. It doesn't always have to be with you, of course. Um, if you want them to practice together as a class, then you can create a virtual learning environment for that. So you might get something like Schoology, um, or Edmodo, which are really great environments for students. They're safe, you can protect them, and then they can help each other that way. But there's also language learning communities which help each other with test prep. And myenglishclub.com is one of them. They have over 100,000 members, and they actually have for the different test groups. They have IELTS, um, they have the business English exams, they have the TEFL, the TESOL exam. So they have the different exams and they have groups for them. So that really helps. Voxapop, they also have different tests that they practice for, and this is an audio community. It's free, but the great thing about Voxapop is because it gives a lot of speaking practice. So your students can actually create a group together. They do have to register for this, but it is free. And they can find groups that have already have like the different exam questions, and then they can practice their speaking and get feedback from each other. You can help them deal with stress with humor. So what kind of ways can we add humor to really get them to, because the more stressed they are, they're not going to do as well in the exam. The more confident they are, there's research that shows that they do better with some confidence. So one way is through memes. There's a lot of teachers, not a lot, but there are teachers who are giving different strategies through memes. So that way their students listen to them. I wouldn't recommend your students make these, but you can go to memegenerator.net and you can find a lot of different memes, or you can make your own. There is questionable content, so that's why I say you probably don't want your students to visit, but I find in most meme making sites that's the case. So just FYI. But you can create them for the test. Um, Here's a good example. This is the success baby, and he says, if you don't know a question on the test, answer is in another question. And I actually got this from Meme Generator. Talking during a task, ain't nobody got time for that. So you can give them the different procedures for the task, and then also tips. So what are some great web tools and apps that help students prepare for tests? One of my absolute favorites is Quizlet.com, and with Quizlet, you can get them to practice different types of vocabulary. A lot of tests, you have to develop vocabulary, know vocabulary. The great thing about Quizlet, it's on any device. It's on the web, it's iOS, Android. And what it does is it has the definition and it has the word. And then the students have several different options of learning the vocabulary. They can either take a test or they can do something fun. They can play games with the vocabulary. So they have two games, Scatter and Space Race. When you make the quiz, when you make your set of flashcards, audio is already is included. So you can search for audio and it'll say the vocabulary word. The students can hear it. It also supports different languages, so you'll find Spanish or French and some other if that's what the test is about. So you can find that as well. Another resource is Exam Time, examtime.com. Your students have to sign up for it, but it has where they can build mind maps, flashcards, quizzes and notes, and of course prepare them for different exams, even exams that you have inside the classroom. So it really does give them a different way to visualize the exam. And they have a free student guide, so you can, on Exam Time, if you do a search, then you'll be able to find that student guide and your students can have some free test or exam strategies. If you're looking for specifically IELTS, and even if you're looking to have business English, or you want your students to practice for a language exam, then gapfillers.com is a way for your students to practice. They get this through also through they can get texted texts that help them prepare for their exams. They don't have to be connected to a smartphone. They don't have to have a smartphone for this. So that's really great. Or they can just contact the community and also have those resources available. ESOCourses.com has some IELTS practice as well, but also some other exam practices. And with ESO courses, these are videos. So each of these links to a video, and then they have a multiple choice quiz or question that comes with it. Now, if you want to create your own video quizzes, then Blubber TB is a great way to take any YouTube video and to add a quick set of questions that your students have to answer after watching this video. This is also pretty good for if you're flipping the classroom. This is one way to get your students to take these at home and to also be assessed. And then there's esvideo.com, eslvideo.com. It's free, but the problem is they do have a lot of advertisements, so just be aware of that. But they are pretty good. You can see how it has the video embedded, and then they have the questions, they have a transcript, and they have notes. And that's why I recommend this, because I think the way they've set it up is actually pretty good. And of course, you can find a lot of these different strategies if you go to My Pearl Trees. You can also find bookmarks and a lot of other ideas. So I'm going to go ahead and share that with you. And if you need to get a hold of me, you can always reach me at these different sites. But you can also always tweet me. I'm there if you want to tweet me. And then also you can contact me, get these videos. If you go to youtube.com/user/TESOL, you're going to find a lot of these videos. So thank you for attending, and I'll see you next week.